Well, Nancy and Paavo, you remember that I'm Louise Hartung. Today is May 20th, 2019, and we're having this conversation about your family's experiences in Finland and the United States during the mid-1940s, the Finnish Center Association in Farmington Hills, Michigan. So we're going to start out with just some introductions. And would you tell me your whole name and when and where you were born?
My name is Paavo Nurmi, and I was born in Enso, Finland, which today is named Svedogorsk, and that's in Karelia.
And did you say the year?
1936.
Okay.
Yes.
And Nancy?
I was born in Rudyard, Michigan in 1937.
Okay. Now we'll go to both of you about your parents and where they were born and when, Paavo?
Well, my dad was born in Lempälä, Finland, which is in the central part of Finland, and my mother was born in Sundsvall, Sweden. But at the age of 8, she moved to Vasa, Finland. And my dad always also moved from Lempälä to Vasa in 1910. And that's how they ended up being in the same town.
Mm-hmm. And what about you and your family history, your parents?
My father's parents, they were from Kuortane, Finland, and they came to the U.S. in 1896. And my dad was born in Ishpeming, Michigan in 1897. And my mom, her family was from Ikalinen, Finland. Her parents came to Pennsylvania, to Glassport, Pennsylvania. So my mom was born there, but she was about 3 months old when they decided they were going to go back to Finland. And so that is where she was raised. But then she came back to the U.S. when she was to retain her citizenship.
And when did she return to the U.S.?
I think it was about 1927.
Okay, so it was after independence, but before these wars.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And Paavo, your father's family came to the U.S.
Yeah, most of my, there was 10 children in my dad's family. And my dad was the youngest. He was born 1906. And but all of his siblings have either been to United States or moved here permanently. So one returned back to Finland, and only one stayed in Finland, never moved to United States,
Mm-hmm.
but has been in the United States for about a year. So all my dad's relatives have been in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to stop. I forgot to tell you that we're talking with each other. It's not something that we're saying to the camera.
Looking at him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we'll look at each other and not at the camera. Okay. And Paavo, where in Karjala did your parents live when the Winter War began in 1939?
We lived in Enso, and my dad had gone over there after his service in the Finnish army, and so that was just because he fell in love with Karjala during his service time, and he moved to Karjala. And then when he decided to get married, he brought his wife.
Where was your family living in November 1939 when the Winter War began?
my dad was already gone to the army because the mobilization was put in order, and my mother and my brother and myself and my dad's almost 80-year-old mother was living with us.
And was that in Enso where
That
you
was
were
in
born?
Enso, Finland.
Hmm. And you said that your father didn't talk with you much about his experiences during the war.
I don't know what the reason was for that, but I think he was about the whole situation was that he just didn't want to tell us kids anything about his experiences.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of things that he told us, like where he's because he ended up being in a artillery unit, and how he was situated in some place with a lot of rocks and stuff, and that was his bad experience, and he just didn't want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And how did you then get this knife sheath that he made?
The knife was given actually by my dad to my cousin. I don't know why he didn't give it to his kids, but he gave it to my cousin, and then my cousin 2001 actually, when we were last time we were in Finland, he said that this knife belongs to you. It doesn't belong to him. He said, I want you to have it
Mm-hmm.
because when your dad came home, he gave this knife to me. So that's how I got it.
Mm-hmm. And what does it? Can you tell us what it says on
It
it?
says Kannas on it, which is the Karelian Isthmus,
Mm-hmm.
and it says 1942 on it. And evidently, he made this while he was building the reef fortifications on the Karelian Peninsula.
Mm-hmm. During the continuation war?
Yeah, it was between the continuation war and the Winter War.
Oh, okay, the
Because
temporary peace.
Yeah, he never came to the civilian life after the Winter War. He
Mm-hmm.
was stayed there because of his occupation. He was a construction supervisor, so they kept him.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't see that for a long time.
And what is that made out of?
That's scabbard is made out of airplane metal. I don't know if it's aluminum or some kind of thing that they took out of downed airplanes. And like as you see, there's the way it was made, handmade,
Mm-hmm.
and the knife I think was some that they got through the service. Everything is worn out inside.
Mm-hmm. Was that planes, Soviet planes that were shot down?
Most likely.
Mm-hmm.
Finland didn't have many planes.
Mm-hmm. What was your father doing in, what work was he doing in Karjala before the war began? And what happened to his business when this war started?
He was a construction supervisor. They were building cellulose factories, and then he also had a trucking little side job, which was he had 3 trucks or 4 trucks or whatever he had that he was running as trucks for hire, and so he had a little trucking business in the side also.
And what happened to those, the truck that he had?
The government took the trucks as soon as the war started, and they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
So the government kept them.
Mm-hmm. That cellulose factory, was that related to forestry work?
Yes. In fact, I think it became like a paper mill or something afterwards. But that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. Now, Do you know where your father served? Was it always in
Yeah, I was
Karjala on the?
on Karelian Isthmus. That's
Mhm,
where he was. That's
mhm,
the only place where he served at during the
mhm.
war.
And when was he discharged from the army?
I
Or don't you know that?
I can't remember what the year was, but I must have been about 1942 because uh, we were as evacuees. We were living in Vasa when he was discharged, and then he went to work in Oravainen, which was a like a they made cloth and blankets and stuff. This company that they were expanding because they made material for the Finnish army uniforms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why he was. Uh, the way I understand, he was more or less ordered that that's where he had to go. But then, in fact, we were living over there when I remember him coming home. Um, he was working there, and we were living in Vasa. And then he moved us from Vasa over to Oravainen, and that's when I remember seeing him in his uniform when he was released.
So you were 3 when the war began.
Yes.
So then you were 4 or 5, so you had a little bit more memory
Oh
at that
yes,
time.
yes. From the wartime, during the war, and being living during the war over there, which were tough times. They were not easy, and you if you didn't grow something like a garden, you didn't have anything during the winter. And if you didn't pick berries, you didn't have anything during the winter time.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't pick mushrooms, you didn't have mushrooms during the winter time. My mother canned everything that we could pick and what we got from the ground.
So can you tell us about the evacuation?
Now the evacuation itself doesn't.
About your family during the evacuation?
Yeah, the um, well, there was. I was so young when we left, but then there were things that really something tells me about it, and then what I've heard from my parents and my brother that we were in the evacuation train in Tampere, and all of a sudden I was missing in Tampere railway station, and they had the whole Tampere railroad station looking for me, and we finally found the police found me over there, and I guess I was safe.
Mm-hmm. So what do you know what your family was able to take with them when they were evacuated?
Uh,
And
some small things because my mother she couldn't carry too much, and my grandma she didn't carry too much.
mm-hmm,
And what do a 3 year old and a 5 year old two boys
mm-hmm,
carry? Not much.
mm-hmm.
So everything we had we lost. We lost our house, trucks, everything we lost.
The Nancy, you had told us about this song Evakon Laulu, which is the song of the evacuees. I
Yes.
think there's a picture in there that shows a typical scene from
Yes.
evacuation. And so this is like your almost like your family because
Yeah, it could be.
it could be your grandma
Yeah,
and well you and your brother
yeah.
and your parents, but
Yeah,
your
my parents,
father,
my dad wasn't there.
yes, he was in the
He was
army.
he was already fighting.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
so that was just my mom and grandma. And us two boys.
So when you got to Vasa, and were they able to make a garden?
No, we didn't go to Vasa, as we were at my aunt and uncle's farm in Tottijärvi. That's where we settled, and that's where we stayed then for the duration of Winter War.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the spring, in March, when Winter War ended, we, we were lucky enough that we were with relatives, and we just moved from there to Vasa because that was my mother's hometown.
Okay, so then
And
did you live with her relatives then in Vasa?
there was my mother's sister-in-law was living in there, and so we stayed with her for about maybe 3 months, and we got our own apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So we weren't depending on really anybody as far as that goes.
So all the time when the continuation war began and your father was still in the service, was he living in another town? You said he brought you to another town where he
Yeah,
was.
this was when he got out,
Oh,
and we were living in Vasa when actually because he got hurt on those construction work out there on the Karelian Isthmus, and he ended up in a military hospital. And so so then when he got home from there, that's when he got this, and he was put into civilian life, and he went to work in that clothing factory.
and so for the rest of the time, then that clothing factory was making the fabric for the army uniforms.
Yes, yeah, and a lot of blankets and all kinds of other materials.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And was he, you said, put into civilian life? Was he still part of the army, or was he
No,
discharged?
yeah, he was discharged finally when we were there. That's when he came home with his uniform. There's a picture here somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's but the only time um, that I remember him in a uniform. And in fact, my mother, when we were living in Vasa, we were little boys, and that was when the German army came to Finland, supposedly helping Finland. They landed in Vasa.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they came to Vasa, and and my mother and my brother and myself, we were standing on the sidewalk watching the German troops marching into Finland.
And were they on, where were they going? I know that they ended up in Lapland, but
Yeah,
when they
but
first
I
came,
really don't know, but that's where they landed. That's what they made. They made the uh, appearance in
Mhm,
Finland. That's
mhm.
where the boats landed, and that's where they came into land.
do you eh, do you know, you were so young at the time, but maybe you learned later, how did people feel about having the German troops come into Finland?
Well, I think there were mixed feelings because there's some people who want because they came there supposedly helping Finland,
Mm-hmm.
and if, there are a lot of people who didn't think that they helped at all. But then there was some people who think that they did. But then, of course, in the end of the war, we ended up chasing them away from Lapland too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was.
Now, the town where your father was living, you mentioned that there were communists there. Were they evacuees also?
No, no. They were local ones that of course, most of the people uh, over there didn't care for the Karelians anyway to coming and barging into their lives. And so, of course, and there was one settlement in this Oravainen, and I can't remember the name of the place, but it was far in the woods. They occupied this lumber camp. because I remember a lot of these Karelian kids come with a horse and a sled and horse and carriage to school
Mm-hmm.
into Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
But they were everybody kind of looked down their nose at them. But we were part of them, except for we didn't live in the woods.
Mm-hmm. So I know it was the Finnish government's decision to place the refugees around the country in different
Yeah, well,
places.
the people who didn't have any destination actually, like we did,
Mm-hmm.
because my dad had already told my mother that when we had to leave, that her sister was going to take us in for the
Mm-hmm.
winter. And but there were people who ended up at these town halls, and farmers from around there. They were making bets according to the size of the families and stuff, who wanted them. So they were settled in different farms, and that's how they were. And they used them as farmhands too.
That's in the song too.
Yeah,
Yes.
so they used them as farmhands then.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did any of those people stay in that area, or were they able to get their own farms, or were they?
Well, I think most of them got their own places as soon as they could.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I don't think any Finn would want to sleep in somebody else's quarters unless they had to.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that in the town there were people who, because your family wasn't part of the Communist Party, they were pretty much opposed to you and showed it by that
Yeah,
poster.
yes, because I think everybody knew that we were not communists. We were chased away from our home by the communists.
Mm-hmm.
So the the funny feeling was that they labeled us fascist for some reason, and we had no. My parents never had any inclination of showing any fascism or anything in their mind or anything. That because they were. I always remember my dad as a Democrat,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact social democrat. But but I don't know how they got that. But they labeled us as such.
And what was the poster like?
They put a poster on our door one time. It was a must have been election time or something because there were political posters, and there was a German swastika on this poster and a fist that was crushing that
Mm-hmm.
poster, and it said it was a Swedish poster. It says "Krossa fascism," which means uh, crush fascism. And then they had put a piece of paper on there where they had a hanging tree with 4 people on there, mom and dad, and 2 younger ones, hanging from the end of the rope. And they said, and the Nurmis are the first.
How do you remember how your parents reacted, how they felt
Well,
about this?
my dad, he had a lot of people working under him, so he just took that poster and folded and put it in his pocket. And when he got to work, he showed it to everybody. See, we got regards this morning. Yep, but it was. I don't think it was more than a year or so afterwards when we moved away from that town.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know, was this an area that had a lot of um, communist support during the independence
No,
Civil
I
War?
really don't know. I
Mhm.
really don't know that. Yeah, but I know there were a lot of communists there.
Mm-hmm. So you said it was very difficult because if someone didn't pick berries or mushrooms or
Yeah.
have a garden. So let's get to Nancy.
That used to buy a flour, and so she bought things like coffee and sugar, probably candy for the kids, I'm guessing, and probably mittens, socks. I'm sure she sent socks that they would knit and send those things over for them. So she tried to do her part over here as much as she could because she had all her family there. She was the only one from her family in this country.
Oh, so she was the only one, whereas
Right.
you had
Most
a
of them.
lot of the family here.
Right. Yes. Right.
So did your family receive packages
Yeah,
from
I remember
family?
receiving packages from here. Not really too many, but there were a few of them, and they were very interesting because I remember one time we got a package. There was a package like Volcar coffee used to come in a paper bag,
Mm-hmm.
and then there was a cocoa canister like they still have in a store, a cocoa. And during this trip, all the way there, the cocoa can had been crushed enough that the lid popped off, and the ground coffee in this bag was out of the bag, so it was all mixed up, and we put it through a sifter to get the coffee granules were a little bit bigger than the cocoa. So when you had cocoa, it tasted like coffee, and when you when you had coffee, it tasted like cocoa. But it was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was good.
Mm-hmm.
The candies that we got weren't really that good. I didn't care for the American candies. Finland didn't. We didn't. The first candy I think that we ever got to buy from store were licorice, and because Finland was producing, Carl Fatcher made a lot of candies during the winter, but they were all sent to other countries because they needed the funds in Finland for recouping after the war.
Mm-hmm. So, what would you say were the effects of your experiences during those war years on you as you were growing up and as an adult?
I really tell you that I think it made me a better person because we learned a lot. We learned to do things with our hands, and we knew how to tolerate other people because we were mixed up with different kinds of people. So we were tolerant of anything that came around. So it was. I think it was in a way it was a good experience.
And Nancy, were you here really very closely familiar with what was going on in Finland? Could anyone send you letters, or how did you know what was happening with your family there?
Yeah, I know my mom got some letters. In fact, I have a couple of letters at home, which I wish I would have perhaps read them over because they were all in Finnish. And of course, I have Paavo to help translate. I can understand a lot of it, but and then I just had a video recording with my mom and her sister when she was visiting here, and she was talking about the war and the difficult time they had, and she was living in Rovaniemi, wasn't it, Paavo, at the time when the Germans came in?
No.
I think that's where she was.
Your aunt.
Yeah.
Yes,
my
your
aunt,
your aunt was
yes,
living up
right.
north there.
And that's when
And
I didn't really know about my uncle Oiva that was killed in the war, but she did say in that he was in a foxhole and it was a grenade tossed in there, and that's what killed him. And
that his picture?
That's his picture. And this was in August of 40. Must have been 43. That's Oiva. And then I have this, which he made for his mother, which my grandmother. And unfortunately, I never did meet my grandparents, my mom's parents. But this, he did it in Kariolankannas. He did it probably during the war, the way I understand it. There's some part of the continuation war. And so
Oh, and it says 1943 on it.
yeah, it says Kariolankannas on it. And then on the other side it says Äidille left, so that was
Oh, to my mother.
mother.
Yeah, to mother.
Yeah. So unfortunately it's cracked. I don't know what
Age.
to do that.
So this in Kaunas and this, so they were both
On the same
they were
level.
both in the Isthmus area
Yes.
Yes.
during the war. Your
Yes.
father and your
My
uncle.
Mm-hmm.
Nancy, your mother tried to do something to have President Roosevelt help. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Cordell Hull was the Secretary of State at the time Roosevelt was in office and all this was going on. And she sent letters encouraging them to help Finland, which I think was pretty good because my mom's English was not all that great at the time, but she did her part as much as she could.
Did she? Do you know if she ever received a response from?
That I don't know. That I don't know. But the U.S. wasn't too keen on sending help to Finland, I don't think.
No.
Back then.
Yeah, that was Finland was in a difficult position because they were fighting for the independence of their country from Soviet Union, but Soviet Union was fighting Germany and the United States was fighting Germany. So this was very difficult position to be
Finland
in.
was in a bad spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was fighting between Russia and actually Germany in the end, but yet we wanted to stay neutral.
Yes.
Also, just like Sweden did, and a lot of these countries did not let any help come to Finland because they want to stay neutral. So there would have been some help, but it didn't get through.
Do you? We hadn't talked about this before, but now this is coming up. Do you know? Did you ever experience or see anything of Soviet troops in Finland after the war?
No. I did not see any Soviet troops. German troops I saw, but not Soviet. Then when Russia rented Porkkala, another little peninsula in the western part of Finland, the Russian trains kept going by all the time. But I think it lasted only until 1956 or 7 when Russia gave it up. They had like a 50-year lease on that area, but they gave it back to Finland, and which was good. Finland needed that. Every time a Russian train went by, you could tell because their whistle was the same kind of whistle as the American train.
Oh.
Finland whistle was a sharp whistle, not like an American train whistle.
So you would know which train was
Yes, you always knew which train was
Russian
going by.
and which train was
Yes.
Finnish.
Yes. Yes.
So tell us about how you came to the United States and when and why and how you got your passport.
Well, we my father when 1951 the gate opened so that you could put your name on the list they had the quota system. And my dad went right away and put our names on because my dad wanted to come already in 1947, but they didn't let anybody here except on a student visa. And my dad said, "You can't work on a student visa, so we are not going until it's legal." So then he put our names on, and then a couple of years, 1953, our names came up. But dad came here by himself because mother didn't want to come at all.
And why is that?
I don't know. He said that she said that she had started life too many times in her life. As an 8-year-old child, she moved from Sweden to Finland, which was right at the revolution time, and they had a hard time. They even took everything at the border away from them, and she came with her mother, of course, and then came Winter War. We lost everything, and she told my dad when he wrote and said that sell everything and come. Mother said no way. She said that I started from the beginning too many times in my life, and so dad came back. He was here only 13 months. He came back, and evidently he sweet talked her into changing her mind.
Mhm.
In 1955, we all came back. So we
Mhm.
came all as a family then.
Mhm. So how old were you when your family was going to come, and what did you have to go through to be able to come here?
Well, I wasn't going to be able to come because the army was in front of me. They wanted me to go to the army, and they didn't want to give me a passport. So, I went to talk to them, and at the I can't remember what the name of the place was but it was army office anyway. And I asked them that if I could get any kind of a passport. So they gave me a passport for 6 months, and so I came here on a 6 month passport with the immigration visa. So when I came to U.S., uh, I went straight to the immigration office, and they said I could stay here as long as I wanted.
And then, how old were you at that time?
I was 18.
All right, so you came here, you had immigration papers. What was the citizenship? How long did it take for you to become a citizen?
Well, actually, it took me 6 years. It usually takes 5 years for some reason. I don't know. I had gone to the U.S. Army. I was a member of the National Guard
Mhm.
over here for 6 years. But when after 5 years, I went asking about the citizenship, and I was told that the fall election was coming, a national election, that they wouldn't give any citizenships out, and which probably was true because they don't want a greenhorn to
Vote.
to vote. So then right after the fall election, I went back and asked them again. Said, "Well, the spring election is coming." That was within 6 months. So I had to wait till May 2nd, 1962, no, 61, when I finally became a citizen then.
And you said you joined the National Guard
Yes,
here in Michigan?
Yeah, over here in Michigan because they wanted me to go and draft me. The draft time was then at that time. And I had just met Nancy and we got engaged. So I didn't want to go there for 2 years.
Mhm.
And, and so I joined the National Guard. So I spent 6 years in the National Guard.
Mhm. So that's a good time to ask, how did you meet each other?
Well, which one's going to talk?
Go ahead.
we met at the Culliver Hall, which was on Indiandale and 14th
14.
Street.
In Detroit?
In Detroit, yes. There was a program there, and I went with my mom and dad. I think it was a Culliver Day
It
program.
was.
And I went there with my mom and dad. So it was I think it was a play that they were having, and then there was a dance afterward. And that is where I met Paavo. And I went home with him he took me home after the program
After the ball.
was over, after a little bit of dancing. So that was it 59? Beginning of 59.
Had to be
I think.
59.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so it'd been like February, because I think that's usually when the Culliver Day program is.
February 28th.
So you met
So-
his parents right away.
I met his parents, well, not right away.
Oh.
I said he took me home back to my
Oh.
house.
I had
So
met her
he did that.
parents. I had met her parents about 2 days after I came to this country.
Oh.
We were a relative of a relative. They got married in Canada, and they were having a party for them in Detroit. So we were invited to this party. And who was there but Nancy's parents? Of
But not
course-
Nancy.
Of
Not
course,
me.
I didn't know her parents.
Mhm.
So that was the first time I talked to them.
Mhm.
So that was kind of interesting.
Well, and then one time, Paavo came to our house. We lived in an upper flat on Santa Rosa Drive in Detroit. And he came with my mother's cousin and her nephew from Finland, and Paavo was with them. But we met on the stairs. I was coming down, and they were going up. So I probably said hi, and that was it. You know, I didn't know who he was, but just so.
It sounds like it was meant to be. There were all these little
Evidently.
things starting.
Right. So,
Yeah.
So you have these artifacts that you showed us. Have you shared the experiences of both of you during those war years with your own kids?
Yes, they know most of it. I don't think there's anything that they don't know,
no.
right?
No, and with the grandkids.
Yes,
The
the grandkids
grandkids.
too. And they, even today, they like to hear more stories now because they're getting a little bit bigger,
Older,
older,
more
and
interested.
yeah, so they like to hear them.
Mhm.
And so I have to tell another interesting story about us meeting. We met in about 1952. I was a guide at the Olympics, 1952 Olympics in
Yes.
Helsinki.
Mm-hmm.
And and then after we had been married a few years and stuff, and started talking about Olympics. And Nancy's sister told me that, well, I was at the opening ceremonies in Helsinki. Her and her husband were there on a honeymoon. And I said, well, where did you sit over there in the stadium? He said, right by where the scoreboard was up there in the end. I said, well, that's funny because I was at the opening ceremonies also, and I sat right by because all these guys and stuff, when we got to go to the stadium for any event, that's where we sat. So we couldn't have been many feet apart,
Mm-hmm.
right there with her sister.
Mm-hmm.
That was all.
Right.
That was good.
One
Yeah.
thing I wanted you to tell them about your macaroni and when you were a kid
Oh,
in school.
Oh, this was wartime. Yeah, wartime. Because we had food in school. We got lunch, and yeah, lunch. We had breakfast home. We had lunch in school, and they had macaroni, what we call macaroni velli, which is a loose like macaroni in milk, and that macaroni wasn't always real fresh. There were tiny little white worms that, when they heated that up, that milk, that seemed to me like the little worms floated to the top. So we always just skinned the little worms off the top, and we ate the macaroni and the milk. That's how we lived.
So you went back to Finland together then. Tell us about that experience in the airport
Oh,
and
well,
when that was.
Yeah, this was. See, I didn't want to go back to Finland until I was a citizen, because I didn't know what was going to wait for me over there. Because if I wasn't a citizen,
Mhm.
I might have been in the Finnish army.
Mhm.
So, but anyway, we were at the airport, and we were in this long line going through the customs.
This was in 1970.
Yeah, 1970.
We went on a charter flight
Mhm.
with the Finlandia Mail
Finlandia Mail
Chorus.
Corps.
Mhm.
We were on the same flight, and we were in the line, and all of a sudden, from the loudspeaker, there was Paavo Nurmi, and they said something else. Then I don't know what they said, because I was in a fog, because after being gone 15 years, and didn't know what to expect. So I asked. There was a customs officer in the side, and I asked him. I said, I heard my name mentioned over there. Could you tell me what it was all about? He said, yes. He said, just take your bags and come through this side door. Don't go through the customs. Just come through here. And so we went through there, and there was 23 of my old friends waiting on the other side of the door.
Waiting
Yeah.
to welcome you.
Yeah, it was really a nice experience.
Mhm.
There was relatives and friends and
Mhm.
stuff, but they were all waiting for me.
Well,
Yeah,
that was a happy return to Finland then.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I think you've shared a lot that everyone in your family is going to be glad to hear all the stories together. You'll be getting a copy of this whole interview, and then parts. There are going to be 6 interviews, and parts of each interview. Small part of each interview will be combined to make the War Remembrance video,
Yes.
and you'll be getting a copy of that
Yeah.
too.
Okay, thank you
And
so much.
that's going to, they'll both be stored in the cloud so that actually people all over the world, so your relatives in Finland can even download this and watch it.
Oh, that's awesome.
My friend from Finland, who he is also a refugee from Karjala. I just talked to them about a week ago or so,
Mhm.
and I was telling him about this. He said, "Can we get a copy of that?"
Well, you can tell him
Yeah.
yes. You
Yeah.
don't even have to have a copy. Just
Yeah.
go to the cloud. That's wonderful,
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
because we want it to go back to Finland.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So she's a Hämäläinen, so she's not Karelian. But this man, when I moved to Helsinki, we have been friends ever since.
Mhm.
And he's been here many times. In fact, their daughter was a flower girl in our son's wedding over here.
Their granddaughter.
Yeah.
Mhm. Very nice.
Yeah, their granddaughter. Their granddaughter. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that's right.
And it was his mother that taught me to make Karjalan piirakas
Yep.
because she was a Karelian
Mhm.
Yeah.
when we were
So-
there
Good.
in Finland.
Nancy got the best instructor there was for Karjalan piirakas,
Mhm.
and we make them all the time.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Well, they are
Yeah.
delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are.
Well, we're going to end the interview, and all of these things that you brought, Glenn will be photographing,
Yeah.
Okay.
and so they'll also be part of your
Okay.
interview. So the things that you have
Well,
here.
these should be explained.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I don't know how you're gonna do this taking pictures of
Well,
these.
he's gonna do that
He'll,
after.
yes,
Yeah.
he's going to take these pictures into the light box.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Who?
That's my dad when he was serving his military duty first.
Okay.
When he was.
Okay, so this one we'll know that's your father. We're going to put that right here.
Yeah.
And the other one of him is on the very bottom.
Yeah. That is when he came out of the army.
Okay.
Oh, I have this picture here. This is my dad's. It's 1928.
Oh.
My dad's truck is the first truck for hire in that part of Finland.
Oh, this is wonderful because that's his business.
And that was my dad's business. But this was at a summer festival
Mm-hmm.
in what's that Viipuri? No, Imatra.
Imatra.
From Imatra.
Mm-hmm.
And that was all decorated, and it says, I eat co-op bread and I feel good. So that was an advertisement for the co-op.
Okay.
Now, what else do we have here? Oh, I don't know why I had this many. There's another truck.
Oh, V. Nurmi. So that's another one of his trucks.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's all his trucks.
That's that must be Antti. My dad had a. This is just. This is from our hometown at Enso.
Mm-hmm.
See, it's
The falls,
yeah,
the rapids.
Rapids in and then there's also
Oh, it's postcard.
yeah, that's a postcard
Mm-hmm.
that my
Okay.
aunt
Okay.
sent us.
So that's a picture of
But
Enso.
this is oh yeah, Antti and Veikko. This man here in this picture, my dad was going across the, I don't know if it was this bridge or Imatra big bridge, and this man was standing over there on the edge of the bridge, and he was just standing there. Dad thought that there was something wrong, and so he stopped his truck and asked the man if he was in any kind of trouble, and he said that I just got out of prison and nobody wants to hire me. I can't get any work. My dad said, "Jump the truck." And he said he was the best man he ever hired.
That goes with the work then.
Yeah.
Good
Now,
man,
this
your
is
father.
this was taken in. A lot of people know Valamo.
Mhm.
It's the monastery in the Valamo Island
Mhm.
in Saimaa, and this came from there when my dad was in the army, and they made the group from the army went to visit that Valamo Lost. What happened to Pikku Paavo? Oh, there's my brother and I in playing in our sandbox. I think in that was in Karjala.
Okay.
Little boys. And this is when we were evacuated. This was taken when we lived in Vaasa. We were living there. Now, and this was in this town of Oravainen.
Mhm.
That was the whole school.
Oh.
I'm there.
About 60 kids in the whole school, maybe.
Oh, come on, Paavo. Pop up. Oh, right there. That's me.
Okay.
And now this This was the boat that we came in United States with.
Oh,
It's called Finn Sailor,
fin
and it was
lines.
Finn Lines.
Mm-hmm.
Was that? By
Doesn't
the
look
way,
like a
that
very large boat to cross the Atlantic.
4,500 ton boat. 13 passengers.
How many?
13.
13
It was a
passengers?
freighter.
Oh, you came on a freighter.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a reason for that. That Finn Lines was owned by the same company that Dad worked for in Karelia.
Mm-hmm.
And and so they were. My dad came the first time, 1953, on that same boat.
Mm-hmm.
And then when our whole family came, and he got a good deal with the passage across.
Yes.
And this was taken on a boat. My dad and my brother and myself.
Okay. So all the boat.
Yeah.
Well, we have lots of very interesting stories continuing. So
Well,
I think we'll end this, and Glenn will take close-up
Yeah.
pictures of everything. And
very good.
thank you very much for sharing your story.
This is awesome.
Yeah.
It really is
Okay.
nice.
I hope everything turns out good.
So far, it's been really informative and very emotional,
Mhm.
Yeah.
the stories.
Yes, I'm sure they
A
are.
lot of these things bring back so many memories to me,
Mhm.
especially during the war when we were kids and we had to. That's why we learned to do everything. We learned to make potato flour. We learned to do everything,
Mhm.
but we had to. Otherwise, we didn't have it.
Mhm.
So
Okay, so
yeah.